Now, when we're talking about the introduction of the NHS, this doesn't just happen without any opposition. It's not something easy for the Labour government to push past everyone, because the one thing that they need for a healthcare service for everyone is for the doctors and the nurses to all be on board. Now, the doctors especially were very much opposed to the NHS. They didn't think it was a very good idea initially. The reason that they didn't, there's two reasons. The first of which is money. So doctors were used to getting very high call-out fees. So if they went and saw someone who was ill, then they would get high call-out fees. And also by treating patients privately in hospitals even, they basically were getting loads and loads of money. It was an occupation where you became quite rich being a doctor. Now, their big fear was that if they worked for the government wouldn't pay them as much money. And that was probably right. I think the government almost certainly wouldn't. They realised they would become salaried. They would have a set amount of money coming in, and actually they didn't think it was fair because they felt that they would lose income. So that was one of the main reasons. The other major reason why doctors and the British Medical Association opposed the NHS was that they were scared that the government was trying to control everything. And one of the big things in society at the time, or one of the things that some people were afraid of, was the government taking over everything and people having to listen to everything that the government said. Essentially a society where the government owned everything that was important, and people thought that they would then have no power and the government would control them. So like a nanny state, I guess. That was something the doctors were also afraid of. They thought that they were very important people within society, and they didn't want to lose their status as important people. So suddenly they thought, well, actually, if all we become are government workers, then we're not important anymore, and we're just going to have to do everything that anyone says. Now, depending on what way you look at it, you could argue that the doctors were right, and actually, if you were a doctor and you were going to lose some money, maybe that is a justifiable reason to oppose it. Or if you do think that the government is likely to try and control everyone, then maybe they do have a good point. Where perhaps they don't know is that is the unfairness of the system. So surely doctors must have recognised that it was unfair that half the population were not getting healthcare, and that they could provide that. So one of the things that Anara and Bevan thought was, actually, these people are just greedy. They're not thinking of the people. They're just thinking of their own profit. And that's something that he disagreed with. Now, when the doctors voted, they voted heavily in favour of not being part of the NHS. By about 40,000 people agreed, and 4,000, let me find the figure here, but 40,814 voted against it, which meant there were 4,000 that thought it was a good idea. So 90% of doctors didn't want it. Now, the way that Anira and Bevan managed to change all of this, he had to compromise. So we couldn't force the doctors to do it. There would have been too much opposition. They wouldn't have just done it. So what he said was, well, look, as long as you work for the NHS, as long as you work where you're treating everyone for free, or some people for free with the NHS, will allow you also to treat rich people privately and give them extra care, and they'll have to pay for it and give you extra money. So even today we see doctors that operate, especially surgeons, people like that. A lot of surgeons, if you were really rich and you say, had to have an operation, say you broke your leg and you were really rich and you wanted the best surgery possible. Now, a lot of those surgeons would also work for the NHS, but you would be someone that paid for them privately. So it was a way for them to top up money. What Anira and Bevan hated the doctors for this, and he famously said that he was stuffing their mouths with gold in order for them to create the NHS. But he thought, well, no, if I have to do that, then I will do it, because he firmly believed in it. So depending on your point of view, you're either going to see the doctors as greedy people that just cared about money, or you're going to think that actually, if you were in their position, maybe they got a good point.